Hello, Endersword here again. Back to playing Everquest. I got back into this over Christmas. I've been off for like 5 years, but basically a new expansion came out and I had a lot of time. Obviously, lockdown and everything like that over Christmas kind of gave me some time off where I wasn't working and couldn't really do anything. So got back into this. It seemed like a good time to do so. So what I wanted to do today was record a video showing kind of how root rotting works. And I know that that's a fairly simple concept in general, but I think a lot of people are not necessarily doing it in a way that's efficient or really getting them the most out of their effort. And this kind of came up in a Necro channel here, and I had a few people ask about it when I was saying they were a little surprised that I was root rotting multiple things at one time, particularly in a zone like Great Divide or a zone like Cobalt Scar, where things are relatively higher HP. So I just wanted to kind of show what I meant by that. And then the other thing that came up was, what spells do you actually use to do it? And I found there was a tendency for people to go towards high DPS spells, whereas I am looking for high DPM spells and high what I call DPC or total damage spells. So to display what I mean, just before I start a lesson, let's grab this little fella and kind of display the general principle of it. We'll only do the one. So we're gonna root him in place. Then what I do is my spell lineup is the 5 wounds spells. So going all the way back to level 95. So there's one at 115, 110, 105, 100, and 95. And they're super efficient. They're essentially your most efficient spells. The thing is that they take a long time to actually take effect. But in this approach, we don't care about that. So all I care about is that this guy will eventually die. So I am just going to light him up. I'm actually going to switch these two here and put my heavy hitter, like faster spells on the bottom and kind of go in order of total damage and efficiency, or some mix of those things together. And my principle here is I'm not using Pyro of Chloragek, or whatever the hell this is, which is a very high mana but high damage spell. It's probably your best like overall DPS spell. And I'm not using Oblivion, which again is just a very high mana but high and fast spell. Instead, I'm sticking to things that are pretty long. And the idea behind this is that root is going to last for 3 minutes. And so all I have to do is put enough damage on it in a certain number of spells to last for, to kill it within that 3 minutes. So these longer wound spells, they take about 2 minutes or a minute and 40 seconds, whatever it is. So a minute 40 to 2 minutes, depending, to get to the point that they switch to that ultra damage mode, where they spawn proliferation, which does a ton of damage. And they're about to do that now. And as long as this all happens before the root wears off, then I really don't care how long it took. Because once I put the spell round on him, he's dead, and I don't have to pay any attention to it anymore. So it doesn't really matter to me that it took a long time to have happen. So there he goes, he's gone, and you could see, like, for literally the last 2 minutes of that, I was just sitting here. I didn't have to do anything else. So that's time that you could be spending it really anywhere else. You could put your attention wherever you like. So overall, that's the principle, and I'll just kind of show how that plays out kiting around. I've got my lesson up anyway, so I was going to do a full lesson burn here. And let's get rid of, I'm just going to spend down to until I'm next to nothing, so it's easy to track kind of what our gain was during this. Still missing a few ranks of things. Let's make our pet better. I don't even really know what to buy at this point. We got 34 left. I guess there's nothing really that spends 4. If I added 1 more, I could do a 35. But let's just leave it with a little bit left over. And whatever. Let's improve my harm shield just to spend this. So we're going to start this off with 4 AA. So remember that. So also you can mix in obviously your burns throughout. I'll kind of cycle through those as needed. You kind of don't need to, but there's times where it may be beneficial to kind of burn something down and move on to the next thing. And I've got no merc up, but I do have the healer loaded. There's one thing in this zone, and sorry, I should probably show where I am. So in Great Divide, and I'm by this river. Ideally, I actually kind of like being down here, but I think there is a group down there, and I don't want to kind of step on their toes. So, so I'm going to be here where it's wide open, but there's several spots around. Like you can be there, you can be over here. Like there's a few spots with these same groups of mobs, and you've got some space to spread out. So good stuff. We'll get going, and let's start with. I don't like those wind chime little guys. Let's see if this pulls too. No, yeah, just the one. So you're gonna be able to get most things single here. If you do get 2, doesn't really matter. Just kind of snare them both, or snare one and root the other. I do kind of hate some of the line of sight things in the snow here. There's just little hills that block these guys from being seen. So basically root the bear down, and then I'm going to dot up this guy. As soon as my root is back, I'll root him down as well. Line of sight stuff. And 2 seconds, 1, and you stay. So basically I'm going to imply the dots on here. You can do stuff like, you know, Mercurial Torment. If you've got a couple and you want to go through them faster, it shaves a little bit of time off. It's not even that much. Oh, what did I forget to do? I always do that. I hate that this is part of it. So the Mortifier Unity thing will put a buff on you that procs ADD. And obviously we don't want that because we don't want to break the roots. So there, I had to reroute that guy. So not necessarily the best start, but we're fine. I guess good to show that mistake, because I took me a while once I restarted playing again to even figure out what was going on, because it just seemed like roots were breaking for no reason, and I didn't know what it was. And it turned out to be that little thing. It gives you 24 charges of a DD type spell. And left. That should probably be fine. Just because it took longer, I might as well. I'll reroute him a second time, but you usually don't have to do that. And then we just kind of continue getting more. And the whole idea is you ultimately end up with like 3 or 4 on the go, depending on the rate that you actually kill things. And of course, this is adaptable to wherever you actually are in terms of gear, whatever your level is. The principle's the same thing. You may be kiting instead of rooting, but again, the principle's the same thing, that we're basically trying to take spells that are going to do damage in an efficient way, and basically conserve your mana, but get things done in the least number of casts, basically. So we'll trigger a lesson on here as these guys are getting fairly close to dying. And again, we'll just keep getting more dudes. Alright, so there's our first. And with lesson on, by the way, these are going to get you close, like fairly consistently close to 5 AA each, which is basically maxing out. Because you're taking, I think they vary by level, but they're 2 point something of an AA. And then, of course, we're doubling that with the lesson, so it does get you quite a bit. And something you can constantly do if you just want to speed up the death is rotate click through your stuff. But I will often do that if I do, say, accidentally pull 2 or 3 and one's not really going to make it before the route is done, then it's another way to, instead of even bothering to reroute, like going back to target the guy, you can just kind of click some of these extras on and it will basically do the same thing. And just ensure their death. And you've got enough of those little extras that it's always gonna keep you going. If they ever make a perfectly flat zone, it would be ideal. One of the ones that I used to use the most in the past, there's an old zone called Beast Domain, and there's a whole section where there's plants there, and I actually have a video I recorded several years back of me doing it in that zone, and the whole thing is like very, very flat, so you can just kind of infinitely kite. But back then I was kiting instead of route routing, and you could just kite them all along. You never lost line of sight almost no matter what. And that was kind of nice. But these, unfortunately, that little hill is annoying. There is a high ground kind of behind us. Oh, he's definitely going to aggro. Yeah. I kind of picked this spot. Again, ideally, I said I like being down by the wall at the bottom of the zone, just because there I know that nothing will spawn behind me. Here, I'm kind of playing into the idea that at least one can potentially surprise me from behind, but that's about it. So you just have to be aware of that cycle. If it does kind of come up, well, in that case I could see it, so that's perfect. But if that does kind of come up, you just kind of try and snare it, root it, run, whatever you've got to do to handle it. A huge asset is Whisper Wind, that if something's behind you, don't even hesitate, just kind of whisper wind forward, then turn around and root it or snare it, whatever you got to do. And I find that's often more effective than kind of panic hitting the death's effigy to feign death. Is just get away from it, and then it will usually shoot you enough to turn around and take care of it. Something else you got to kind of keep going is don't let your mana get too low before you start using your extra mana resources. And again, that's going to vary based on your character, how much mana you've personally got, what your regen rates are, etc. So you'll have to design around that. And 2 again. I'm kind of getting a lot of 2s where I usually don't. So here, Whisper Wind forward. And root that guy. And what I'll often do if I've got 2, I'll try and get the wounds on one and then loop back to him with the other spells. Because those ones take the longest by far to do their full damage, so I kind of want to get the benefit out of that right away. Let me get him to a spot where I don't have to deal with line of sight. Oop. Something I don't see people also exploit enough is they always refer to the pest paralysis as doing knockback damage, or not damage, but like doing a knockback when you root it. The reality is it doesn't knock it back. It knocks it in whatever direction you are facing, which doesn't make any sense really, but it's actually something that you can use very much to your own advantage. Because if something is, what am I seeing out of the corner of my eye? If something is, I think that's my own knife. If something is going to be below line of sight, say it's on the low ground here, let's see if actually I can do it with this guy. Then you can root it in a way that's going to just jump it into a better spot for you. And this is especially true if you're trying to root rot in like a dungeon or a tight space, controlling that directionality of where you're going to root it. So let's say I want him up there. I just root him forward and he's going to jump in the direction I was facing. And I kind of forgot, now I remember and I see from my extended window, I forgot to go back to that wind sprite and put on the additional higher power or faster dots. So I'm going to loop back to do that. But you can see this is just getting to the point that it's allowing those to take effect. And here, if you feel like it, you could do a quick one. Here, I'm going to bounce up. Again, he's on the low ground. I'll toss him up here so we can see him better. And I'll drop a snare just in case that root does break. Or, well, it's not going to break because I just refreshed it. But whatever. Snare is also good damage. It's good control of space, but it's also... it actually is one of your more efficient damage dealers. Even though it doesn't deal a lot of total damage, it's kind of one of those, it's beneficial anyway, so you might as well be using it. I have an audio command that actually prompted me there. So I have an audio command that looks for the term restless ice. The reason I do that, and I should refine it so that it doesn't refer to objects named restless ice, because everything in TOV and COV seem to have restless ice in it, is there's a spell that is randomly and very rarely cast by the wind chill sprites and the restless coldanes in this zone, and it basically does a ton of damage. So it's a dot that will be on you for, I think it's like 30 seconds. And then past the life of that dot, it will turn into a 4-minute long dot. This is more than I actually wanted. So we're gonna root one. I didn't think I'd get all three here, but that's, we'll deal with it. So this will take a little more tap dancing than I want it to do, but it's totally fine. It's hard to tell with these sprite guys often how close they really are together. Oh, do I have one behind me? All right, this is a little bit of a disaster, but we're gonna live through it. Actually, you know what? Screw it. We are going to feign through that. Pick it up again. Root that guy down. You are rooted down. Throw a life tap. Yeah, 3 or 4, I would just kite through it. I kept accidentally running into extra things, so why bother? We'll just feign through it. So getting down below half mana. Here I'm going to actually not only Death Bloom, but I'm going to start the Death Magic. And we just have to keep an eye on what our health is during that. Obviously, you've got tap options to get your health back up to make sure that you don't die while doing things like blood magic and death bloom. There's a few extra options as well. I do have some of the robes will have, and I've got actually a fairly decent decent robe. I kind of splurged for that, or kind of went out of my way to get that. I'm not generally like raid geared, but I was able to get the trade skill stuff for that. And what it does is it actually has, while I'm kiting this guy, turn it on, it's got a DD added onto it that is a life tap. So it will return life for each spell that I cast. The only thing is, of course, again, that's a DD. So I can use it for now, but once I decide to root this guy, then I want to stop using it. So I might as well do that to get him going. And then I forgot what the logo is, it's this, so I gotta click that off before we get working on him. You can see, I kind of like that there's a visual indicator on it, but when these wound spells expire, you can see that they hit the new guy. And same with over there, you can see that they hit him. So just I don't know, a nice little guide of where you are with that. We're not quite halfway through the lesson yet, but we're maintaining mana pretty well, other than me accidentally ending up with like 6 behind me. Been going relatively smooth, only had to feign that one time, and to be honest, I usually don't have to do that at all, just kind of start it with a random 3 and then a little out of room to maneuver. The other spells, just so I might as well go down the list because I talked about the wounds ones. So from there, I'm then into Broiling Shadow, which is a pretty good, efficient fire one. Does a fair bit of damage altogether. Definitely worth adding on. I'll do another kind of tap to make sure I stay high. I'm now getting into those costly blood magic areas. So yeah, the Broiling Blood one, or Broiling Shadow, it's I guess the Boiling Blood line or whatever it is. That's pretty efficient. I then do, and I don't know that this is right yet, I've done some experimentation on what it really does on average, but Chaotic Miasma, it puts a debuff on, and it puts either Miasma itself or a Pyre line of spell on, or it can put both on. So when it puts the Miasma, then this is definitely not worth the mana for damage. But the fact that it puts the Scent of Mortality on actually makes it easier for these next 2 to land. So depending what you're doing, if you're having any resistance problems at all, putting that curse on essentially eliminates all resistances. But I find without that, you will get the occasional one, and I almost like not even having to pay attention on to whether something gets resisted. So I find if I just do the Scent of Mortality thing, that just nothing gets resisted whatsoever. So it seems worth it from that point of view, but I don't think it's worth it from the damage point of view unless it hits the fire damage as well, in which case then it's well worth it. Beyond that, we go into the combination Danvid's Grip of Decay, which of course casts the highest of your grip spell and highest of the decay spell. Both of those are quite efficient. Danvid's Decay is right up there, like in the top 3, I think, for total efficiency. And then I kind of round things out with the Crystal Crawler Venom there, just to cap it off. You're going to want to test whatever your gear supports. So you may be better geared than me, you may be worse geared than me, you may be different levels, whatever it is. Determine what the HP of the mobs that you're doing is. So these average something like 26 million. So you want to figure out what spell lineup can you use that's going to like high 90% of the time, probably like 99% of the time, are going to kill the thing. So there's some variation for sure in the damage that you're doing. There's a lot of random ticks. You may get less crits, more crits, crit for a huge amount, whatever. So you want to figure out what's consistently going to get you that damage, so that you don't end up having a root break. And you could see a little earlier, one of those sprites got away. It broke one tick before it was going to die. So things like that can be a little bit dangerous if you're not fully doing the damage in time. And that one was because, of course, I put the dots on it late. So figure out whatever it takes for you to do that, to get the kill, and then that's your lineup. And you want to do that in the most mana efficient and cast efficient way. So your main resource in this is actually time. So mana and time. But as long as you can control your mana part, then it's really down to how long does it take you to run to the next mob, snare them, put the dots on them, root them in place, like whatever it is, the order that you're going to do, and then move on to the next one. So the real cost of killing this guy is the time that it took to do this. So the time I took to run over there, the time that I'm putting these on, and all told, this is probably like 30 to 40 seconds for each dude. And then of course it depends, like where's your next closest target. And so here I'm running a little farther to get this last bear. So the more dense things are, the less of that running you're going to have to do. If things are right around you, you can just kind of root them all in place, then that's really perfect. If you have to split something, then obviously that's going to add a little bit of time, because you have to be a bit, you have to do a lot more running back, changing targets, getting the roots down, kind of killing the 30 seconds between the root spell casts, and so on. But it's really that time is a resource. And as you end up getting better at your kiting pattern, and as you end up just improving as a character, and this is one of the things I like most about this too, is as you actually get better gear, as you get better AAs, as you get better whatever it is, then what you're going to find is that it takes less and less spells to kill these things. So one of the major kind of fun to me sort of things is kind of when you hit a point that you're like, hey, I don't need 8 spells anymore, I can do it with 7 spells. And then, hey, I don't need 7 spells anymore, I can do it with 6. And so you end up kind of advancing further and further, so that in Sathir's Tomb, for instance, which I was using to level up to 115 a lot, or getting kind of early AA between the two, is you could, I reached a point that basically I could drop a root on it, drop the first 4 wound spells on it, and that's it. And it was going to die. It was only, those things only actually have like 13 million HP, about half the amount that these do. But for the HP they have, that's actually pretty, it's pretty good AA or XP that you're actually getting out of it. So being able to be more efficient and saving that extra cast is what let me kill more things. It's not that I did more damage faster, it's that I was doing more total damage. And that's kind of the key to then leveling up faster, adding additional AA per hour or AA per lesson, I guess. And generally, I guess your AA per lesson, whatever you get there, should equate to what your AA per hour without one is, since it's just about double. Or it is double, but you may behave slightly different. So I kind of like having that sense of progressing, sort of thing. And then you could also just add more and more and more targets to things. So when I was doing what I was doing right before the COV expansion, I think I last played maybe in Empires of Kunark. So the best zone to kite in was Frontier Mountains at that point. And there's a whole section of trees, the oaks or whatever, the Grove Guardians, I think. And the beauty of them, one, they're plants, so you get bonus damage on them as a Necro with a certain spell. I forget which one, but the equivalent of whatever miasma is. So you get bonus damage on that. They have relatively good HP for the XP that they were, and they were just in a huge open space, and every one of them stood completely alone. None of them were double pulls. You could just run up and do whatever you wanted. Here, actually, this is an example. I think I missed putting this on, and as a result, the disease got resisted. So I kind of skipped over that spell gem going. So as a result, that got skipped, and I ended up missing out there. So that's kind of why I like the miasma. But yeah, in that zone, Frontier Mountain. So if you're around level, forget what level it is, like 100, 105, really up to 110, you'd still be pretty good there. And maybe, I don't know what point they're 101 and 102 in level. So what's that equate to? I guess you're good up to like 106, probably before they turn light blue. So there you could literally end up kiting 7 behind you. They're spaced out, so you don't want to root route them because you're going to run out of range of the XP itself. But you could just kite them around and just run to the next one, run to the next one. Everything was single, so you never had to turn around and deal with any problems. And again, eventually as you progress in an area and get better at what your technique is, and also get better just by nature of your character getting better, then you're going to find that you can add more. And I don't know why, I've always found this sort of thing relaxing, to be able to just kind of systematically control an area and then kind of work on, how do I refine this, how do I make it better, how do I make this run smoother, what little kinks are there, where was I getting, 2 or 3 adds, where did I have to feign, whatever, that sort of technique. Something I mildly brought up earlier was and I kind of expect it to happen, because usually in a half hour it'll happen like once, but the Restless Ice spell that they can end up casting, and it seems to be the Windchill Sprites and the Restless Coldanes, when that gets on you, you can try and life tap your way through it. Your dot won't do it. You're going to need to like swap out a spell gem or have one of these loaded with the actual like static tap. But even then, it's actually really hard to keep up with the damage it does, and it does it for a long time. It's basically on you. The first one's on you for 30 seconds. If you don't cure it then, it will carry on for another 4 minutes, and it will switch from a curse to a disease. So what you can do, and I was hoping it kind of happened to just demonstrate for it, but basically if you got a healer merc loaded up, as soon as you notice it on you, and I set an audio trigger to see when it's cast on me, is you want to immediately feign death and then very quickly hit the unsuspend button. So you've got maybe a second or two, probably not even 2 seconds, where you've ducked aggro, but your next dot tick hasn't hit yet, where you can unsuspend your cleric, and then it will prioritize healing that off you. So it can either just heal through it, but it will actually remove that curse from you like fairly quickly. And then you can either kill whatever you've got left to kill. Go over there. How did you live? I don't know how that one lived. That'll work. Yeah, you can either kill what you have to kill. That's a good time to actually use kind of your burn down skills. So, because you now want to clear everything so that you can get your aggro gone, so you can resuspend the pet so it doesn't take, or resuspend the merc so that it doesn't take any more of your XP from you. And Death Piece usually won't do it. You have to have Death's Effigy, which of course has a minute-long cooldown. So you're not going to want to waste a full minute to get back to that. You kind of want to use some of your, all right, let's kill things quickly sort of things to get them down so you can get that out and start the next wave again. And one thing I've definitely noticed for myself here, when I was first doing this, I would definitely run out of mana in a half hour, that I would have to either take a break or really cut back and slow down on what I was actually doing to get the mana back up. Now I'm finding that I can run that relatively straight through, which probably means that I can be more aggressive with what I'm casting and switch to more mobs quicker. But I think we got an okay pace that's actually going on here. I'm not sure. I haven't been tracking how many kills. I have like a log parser open that's going to, I guess, tell me at the end how many I killed, but I won't be able to see, obviously, whatever the AA count actually was. Now, what do we got? Like 3 minutes left, so we're gonna try and get some more guys from down here. See, I don't like the wind chill guys. All right, here. I find just with the wind chill guys, I'm bad at the depth perception. It's kind of hard at a glance to tell how far away they really are. Moving forward. And something you can do too, I haven't paid too much attention to this because I'm just pulling random mobs, but since I've got him rooted and I know, let's say I want that mob over there, there's no reason that I shouldn't be, as I'm casting between these cooldown times, why don't I run towards that mob so that the moment that I'm ready to pick it up, I'm already within range of him. And of course he's going to walk away making me look foolish, but the principle works, and we'll take this Coldane instead. So it's kind of like if you ever played like a lot of pool or something, it's kind of like you want to pocket this ball, but you also want the cue ball to go in a space that you've queued up your next shot, where you're in a good position. So if, for instance, I ran this guy all the way down there, well, that's not where my next mobs are going to be, so I'm going to have to run all the way back. Once you've got really used to an area, particularly if you're in an area that has like static spawns, then you're going to learn the spawn pattern, exactly where things are, exactly when they're repopping, and you can work out an absolutely like beautiful system. Here there are a number of things that wander around, and I think they alternate between which of the three mobs can spawn there, so sometimes it's harder to see these little guys. But you could definitely, all right, here we go. This is the ice spell. So we're gonna do that. Oh, did that not work in time? I think it didn't work in time. All right. So I'm gonna immediately kind of try and save myself with life taps, and I'm not gonna make it. All right, well, you know what? We were in the last minute anyway. That kind of shows the thing here, that you only have like a split second to get that. So that's the cost of fail. But here, my Merc did heal me as soon as I got him up, but I literally missed like the half second that I had to get that dead. And invis around. So I was up here. My lesson will wear off before we can get back to these guys. I think a couple of them died. There we go, back in range of this fella and these other fellas, but of course they're gonna regen a whole bunch. And you, of course. he may actually decide to redot me, which is annoying. And I think the range on it is super long. So I'll just burn these guys down. Unfortunate end, but you get, actually, that's the risk of it. So I think that shows fairly clearly kind of what I'm talking about, at least, in terms of the what you need to be aware of, and I just didn't quite execute it properly. But that's the overall technique, is just feign, and you very quickly have to get that back on. Now that I've got my little dude, he's fine. And we'll just clean this up, but these guys are definitely past our lesson. And obviously you could see I bound in the same zone. Just this is my kind of home base, so. So this is where I tend to be. This guy's already half dead, so finish him off. So I don't know what these do. Whatever because these are past the lesson, let's subtract 6 or 7 from whatever my end count is. And of course, I'm surprised I had as much mana as I did to do this. So let's turn all this stuff on for the last part here. And we'll just clear these guys out. Yeah, I will waste mana at the end just to close it. That was a big tick. Alright, so these 3 were outside our lesson period. So we'll, let's be super fair and take off 8. So there's no way that the 3 of them give more than 8 AAs. Wait for the last guy to die. So our total here, so we started at 4, would be 195, take off 8 more, so 187, I think is fairly decent for a half hour. I've gotten as high as 200 when I didn't die. So obviously, if I doubled the last 2 instead of dying, then that would have been very close to the 200 mark. So pretty good. Here, I find this is one of the better spots. But again, you can adapt this sort of technique to any level. It doesn't have to be this specific place. There's equivalent things depending what your level is, depending what some of your preferences are. If the key is just very simple, you want to find an area that has a lot of consistently respawning things that are rootable, things that are snareable, things that aren't going to summon, ideally things that don't cast too many spells. That's the only downside to this, but it seems fairly rare that they do it. Like once an hour, maybe you run into one. But overall, pretty good spot, but I'm always on the lookout for more. If you prefer COV stuff, there is a really good spot in Cobalt Scar where you only want to kill Restless Coldanes. I just want to push myself over 200, so I'm going to bring this guy so I can buy something. There's a spot with Restless Coldanes that don't summon, they are snareable. They're up to level 115, so each one of those I think is giving 3 point something AA even without a lesson or anything on. Just naturally they give like 3 point something. So that's a really good spot. The downside, of course, is that they've got 30 something million HP, so it's about 50% more than here. I think they're not quite 50%, but I think they're somewhere in the ballpark of 31 to 36 million HP, so you've obviously got to use more spells unless you're just geared way better than me, in which case that is certainly an option. So here I'm going to do the same thing. I want to suspend this time. I don't want him to steal steal my XP. But yeah, this is the overall technique here. A little embarrassed that I died, but at least it was in the last minute, so it didn't really ruin the demonstration. Just kind of actually demonstrated the risk of that one particular spell here. You can kind of see how quickly that did actually rip through my life there as well. But how easily the cleric can get it off you if you do manage to get him back up. So I'll leave it there. This guy obviously popped on me. I didn't even mean to kill him, but there he is. As I don't really have the mana to deal with him in the first place. But hey, blood magic is free. So here you go. If you want to see some of the past zones too, obviously it's very much set in the past, but I've got videos from like 4 years ago and like 7 or 8 years ago doing Beast Domain and Frontier Mountains, and those are exclusively kiting. So if you want to do a kiting method, then then check those out for sure. And if you want to do this sort of route routing method, then to me this is kind of the best that I've found. I do acknowledge, however, as a disclaimer, that I've only been back playing the game for like a little over a month now. I think there's some subtleties, some extras. There may be some extra abilities, potions, special pieces of equipment or whatever, techniques that could massively speed this up. So I'm not by any stretch saying I'm the fastest at this sort of thing, and I'm sure there's improvements that can be made here, or things that have happened in the past 5 years that I'm not even aware of how they work. So take it with a grain of salt, but overall, take it or leave it. This is what it is. I'm clicking my old thing from like TACV or whatever it was that does basically no damage, but it's there. Yay. So good stuff, and thanks for watching, and see you again.